I like to keep my Tuesday nights free because maybe my Star Trek pals want to stop by and talk a little Trek with us. It's Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Yes, it is Mission Log Live. When you and John and I get together to talk Trek, Star Trek. We like to say Trek because we're ITK, which of course means in the know, but you probably KT. Anyway, what we do is we bring on a guest, we ask them questions, then you get to ask them questions as well. But to do that, you of course have to join us and ask the questions. You can do that a couple of ways. First of all, you can click on the Zoom meeting, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone. You can also call us, if you like doing the call thing. 646-558-8656 is the phone number to call. 646-558-8656. Then you enter the meeting code that you'll find in the show description and the comments. Then you can be a part of all this. Joining us this week is Krystle Starr. I'm very excited. I have spoken to Krystle. I'm sure she doesn't remember. It was a couple of years ago, but we talked in Vegas. I know you've been hanging out a bit and talking to Krystle as well, John.
Yeah, I don't remember. Did we hang out, Ken, in Vegas? You and I.
I don't. I really don't like to spend time with you in person.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, Krystle was in LA recently. We had a good chat about Trek stuff, which definitely I felt like needed to be shared with the Mission Log audience. So a lot of Trek talk coming up, Krystle, in a moment. Yeah. Now, let's say hello to our friends very quickly who are joining us online. Always nice to see our friends. There's Dave, there's Carlos, there's Jason, there's David, not to be confused with Dave. I don't want to make that mistake ever. There's Paul, there's Ian, there's Donna, Albert, just so many people saying hi. Hi, Chuck. He says, hi, everyone. Hi back to you, Chuck. And hi to Wes, who says hi, well, specifically to me and you, Ken. See, Chuck is saying hi to everybody. Wes is just saying hi to us.
I applaud both of those, honestly, because on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, good for you, Chuck, include everyone. And I'm like, good for you, Wes, because, I like when people say hi to me specifically.
Right. So thank you, as always, to everyone who is watching live on Facebook or on YouTube. And thank you to the people who are watching the video later as well. Finally, thanks to the people who are listening to the audio-only version of the show. It's not just about this show, though. The Roddenberry Podcast Network is a network of podcasts. Funny how those names work like that. Available at podcast.roddenberry.com. So you got Mission Log, you got Mission Log Live, you have the Trek Files, Women at Warp, and Priority One. Collect them all at podcast.roddenberry.com. And finally, please, we have very fragile egos that need to be stroked. So wherever and whenever you're watching or hearing this show, head to the source, hit like, hit share, write a review, or give us 5 stars, share the love. Look, love is more than just holding hands. It's also sharing your favorite shows. Paul McCartney said that. Don't know if you knew that, Ken.
Is that off Egypt Station or whatever his new album is?
It might be. It could be.
Or did you just say that was something that Paul McCartney said one time?
Okay, I just said it was something that Paul McCartney said at one time because I happen to like Paul McCartney.
Yeah, dude, it's very current. He had a #1 album last week for the first time in over 30 years. I'm not making fun. Yeah, well, yeah. It raises a debate about streaming music versus buying music, but we can talk about that some other time. Mm-hmm. Instead, why don't we talk about some stuff that we have upcoming? Because we're here in this reality, and this reality is cool. But sometimes we like to go into the virtual reality as well. In fact, we are doing that this weekend. Or no, not this weekend. In a couple of days. Thursday, 27th of September. And we're bringing a Star Trek luminary with us. Doug Drexler is going to be... Well, you got to spend time again with Doug yesterday, right? Running around the Nexus. No, did he take in any one thing in particular? Maybe a couple of things in particular? Did anything grab his attention, or was he as frenetic as I would imagine he might have been?
Yes, and more.
Okay.
Yeah, Doug. It's sort of like the proverbial kid in a candy shop. That is Doug. And I kept saying, like, hey, is there one thing here, or a couple of things you want to focus on? He was like, and then there's that, and then there's that, and I worked on that. So that is the kind of night I expect on Thursday when we have Doug in the Nexus, and I can't wait.
So that's going to be a day after tomorrow for people who are listening live, or tomorrow for people who are listening tomorrow, or today rather for people who are listening today, day after tomorrow. I'll get all that right at some point. 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern is when that'll happen. That is in the Roddenberry Nexus in Sansar, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. And then we jump ahead 2 weeks to the 11th of October when we are going inside Star Trek. Oh, you got your John Champion, you got your Rod Roddenberry, you got your Can Ray. All three of us are going to be there. So back in the mid 70s, Gene Roddenberry didn't have a TV show on the air. He had a couple of pilots and things like that, but he was into this project, he was into that project, and one of the projects that he had was an album that he recorded called Inside Star Trek. Some of this was Gene Roddenberry sort of exploring some big ideas. Some of it was actors playing characters from Star Trek. And this album sort of exists, and yet, a lot of people don't know about it. So Rod had this idea. He was like, why don't we go through, we'll each pick out 1 or 2 tracks that, appeal to us in particular. We'll play it for people in Sansar, and then we'll chat it up. So that is happening on the 11th of October. And again, we sort of like that time, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. That is Thursday, the 11th of October. So, circle that right now on your calendar. And remember, if you have the whole headset thing, if you've got an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive, you can come in and you can walk around and you can pick stuff up and you can sort of be in that space. If, on the other hand, you have a computer that runs as far back as Windows 7, does have to be a Windows machine, but if you have a computer that runs as far back as Windows 7, you can go to sansar.com. You still need to make an account. You still need to make an avatar, but it doesn't cost you anything to do that. And then you can be there for it as well. So it would be really fantastic if we had a lot of people turning up for that, both for Doug on Thursday, the 27th of September, and then for the discussion around Inside Star Trek. Because the last thing there, kind of like this show, we want it to be a discussion with everyone. It's not going to be Rod plays a thing, Rod says what he wants to say about it, and then we move on. Rod's going to play the track that interests him. He'll talk about why it interests him, and then whoever's in the room, be part of that discussion. Make that discussion happen, actually. Otherwise, it's going to be a really boring time of just watching us stand around talk.
By the way, Dave was asking in the chat just now if the Sansar event will be recorded so you can watch it later. And apparently everything is captured on Twitch. And
not everything is captured on Twitch. No, I was hoping that we could actually show round 1 of the trivia that happened a couple of weeks ago. And unfortunately, somebody forgot to hit record. So it doesn't happen automatically, but for big events like this, for Inside Star Trek and for Doug coming in, we'll definitely make sure to have that recorded so that either people can watch it later or, ideally, I would love to turn it into an audio thing that gets thrown up as an extra as well because, just as many places as we can get out good content, that's something I would like to do.
No worries. All right. So as we do every week, we like to ask a poll question. Now, last week, we had Kevin Dillmore on, and we were talking about his work with Hallmark, and then among many other things, but Hallmark is something that he is known for. And we asked you, how much geek is on your Christmas tree? Is it less than a quarter? Is it more than a quarter? Less than a quarter, 61% of you. More than a quarter, 39% of you. I think I firmly fall into that 39% that is more than a quarter geek on my Christmas tree. But, things change. Might have to move some ornaments around. Might have to just do a geek-dedicated tree than another tree that's the non-geek. Ken, you're less than a quarter, right?
Yeah, but only because I have a whole bunch of little glass ornaments that I put. You almost can't see there's a tree at my tree by the time I'm done, John.
Wow.
So yes, it's less than a quarter. Although if I put in as many ornaments as humans do, then it might be about more than a quarter. For this week's poll question, by the way, because of course we do have one every week, to cosplay or not to cosplay? That is the question for this week. Look, if you don't cosplay, there's absolutely no shame in it. And if you do cosplay, there's absolutely no shame in it. John's got that Rip Shirt Kirk thing that he does. I did a cosplay one time, actually with John, although it was really more about the props than it was about the costume. I think the costume was easy, which is pretty much why I chose it. I thought, this will be easy. And then I spent so much time on the props, I might as well have made a good costume. But the question to you is, to cosplay or not to cosplay. Currently, it's 62% cosplay, 38% no cosplay for me, thanks. So the poll, by the way, is happening. It happens until next week's show, honestly. So vote like the poll depended on it, won't you?
So, and by the way, in that poll question, you might notice that in the cosplay picture, the person who's peeking out from behind the flag wearing the Starfleet uniform, well, that would be none other than our guest. See, sometimes we like to theme those polls to our guest, and that is, in fact, our guest, Krystle Starr, who you mentioned being partly known, among many things, but partly known for cosplay. So why don't we just go ahead and welcome Krystle onto the show. Krystle, how are you tonight?
I am doing so good. How are you guys?
Very good, very good. Our rooms are not about to catch on fire like yours. So if there's an emergency at any point during the show, you just get up and leave if you have to, okay?
Will do.
All right. Don't be endangered at all.
I'm really careful with these, though. I'm very responsible with my fire.
I believe in it. All right. Hey, so first questions first. We'd like to ask everybody who comes on the show kind of what is their Trek story? What brought them to Trek fandom? And I know that we'll land there eventually, but I do want to hear about your first exposure to Trek. So give us the rundown.
So I don't really remember a time without it. My parents divorced when I was 2, and every Wednesday I got, was dad's night with me, and we always watched either a TOS episode or a TNG episode, and then we played Rainbow Bright board game afterwards. So good balance. Mm-hmm. So I think I've, as long as I can remember, the characters have been there. They've just existed. But I remember in high school, my dad would, on Friday or Saturday when I had girlfriends come over, he would buy everyone pizza and food. And I think I would have 4 or 5 girlfriends for the night, almost every weekend, it seems. And we would watch one episode, but one episode could last 2 hours because my dad would continuously rewind or pause. If anyone got up for a drink and walked in front of the TV, we'd have to rewind that scene. And he would always explain the significance of the political voice behind Star Trek. And he'd be like, do you guys know why this and this is happening? And he was like, do you know why it was so interesting that Chekhov was, part of the crew during the Cold War? And he just, was so, I think I learned more about politics through Star Trek and kind of how to treat others, I guess, in that time. So what's funny is that my dad and I actually, we've got the TOS box set. And so we're rewatching it again. And so maybe once every other week, my dad will come over and we'll do a Trek night. So the tradition still goes on.
And does he still pause it and explain to you why it's important?
Yes.
Oh my God, just kidding. Really?
I'm serious, because he's like, do you remember? And if I can't remember, if I cannot tell him, I get another history lesson.
Well, so now wait a minute. First of all, this sounds like it could absolutely ruin Star Trek for you. If you're 8, that might be a way to keep you off.
The pausing didn't really start until I was in junior high school. Before then, we would just watch it together, and then the explanation behind everything started in junior high school, and it was always when I had friends over. So it was really embarrassing, because my dad was known as the Trek dad, and if you go into our living room, it's just, I never knew what to get my dad for any holidays. So I would just get him Trek memorabilia. And so actually, while I was at the studio with you, I was waiting outside with all your collectibles. We have a lot of those. And I was taking pictures and sending it to my dad. And I was like, look, we have a lot of these. So the living room is, my dad's just known as that guy.
Well, so what stuck? You said that, from those times being a teenager and watching with your dad, that it was the political messages, the social messages, all the stuff. This sounds like what we do on Mission Log, which is to analyze an episode and talk about it and figure out what's the heart of the show. So what stuck with you, either in terms of messages, or in terms of episodes, if there are particular stories that just really resonated with you?
Honestly, I think one of the biggest things, especially with like TNG, we're seeing, like, I loved Troy. Like, she was like everything to me, and Crusher. I felt like I could really be whatever I wanted to be. And having, having those women to kind of look up to were just honestly really great for me. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like one thing that like really, really like stuck out. I think that it's a very big collective piece just because I've had so many hours. I don't like, there's not just like that one single time or that one single episode. How many episodes of Star Trek are there? There's so many. So I don't know. I think it was just an overall sense of like calming, like a very, it brought me peace. I think is what it did for me a lot. Like, it was, whatever happened during the day, Star Trek would just kind of be that nice, calming, everything's going to be okay at the end of the episode. Like, we're going to get into some trouble, but at the end of the episode, it's all going to make sense. So I don't know if there's like one particular episode for me, really.
646-558-8656 is the phone number to call. 646-558-8656. You can join our Zoom meeting, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or you can just pick up the phone and call 646-558-8656. If you want to share your Star Trek memories, if you want to talk about your cosplay stuff, because we do have a poll going as well, just call in and talk. It's your Star Trek pals talking. We'd love for you to join us. There are a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. Okay, so you say it's sort of like a calming, sort of like a warmth to it. I'm wondering, is that just TOS-TNG? Is that, I know this episode like the back of my hand, so even if it's like one of the darkest episodes of any series, you're like, but I know these characters and I know how this goes. I mean, is it?
I think so for me, Star Trek is extremely important to my life because of the time shared with who I watched it with. So because my father was like always there when I watched it, I think that might have a lot to do with it as well. Like, just knowing that like my dad's in the room and these characters, like, I feel like that has a huge part of it. Because I don't feel that way with Voyager or, Enterprise. I don't have that. But I watched, TOS-TNG, and I'm actually showing my dad Deep Space Nine right now, because he just he didn't really watch it. He for whatever reason he just never really did. So this is really fun. I love watching Deep Space Nine with my dad. It's on Netflix, so we're kind of just taking it slow. We're on season 4, I think, together. So
okay, no spoilers, because we're only up to like season 2 point. We're like the 8th episode of season 2 right now.
Oh, okay, no spoilers.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, because I hear there might be a war or something.
Some kind of war, maybe.
Well, yeah, whatever. It's But I mean, it's interesting. So it's interesting that you guys are finding new Star Trek, and that actually leads me to another question that I'm curious about.
New Star Trek.
Well, new for him though. I mean, seriously, if you never really watched it before, but it does make me wonder about like truly new Star Trek. Like,
I won't watch it with my dad. The new Star Trek, the Discovery.
Yeah. So we talked about this, and I want you to talk about why, because quite honestly, no. Look, this is something that Ken and I talked about on the show, and we got a lot of feedback and a lot of comments from listeners who felt very strongly one way or the other. And honestly, I keep going back and forth about certain elements of Discovery that might drive some people away. I want you to express your take and don't hold back, because it's your experience and your opinion.
Okay. So for me, I actually used to be a teacher for adults with special needs, and I used Star Trek to kind of teach a couple of lessons. And I knew that even if I hadn't seen an episode in a decade or more, that I could always trust that Star Trek would be okay to show my classroom. And with Discovery, I cannot do that. With Discovery, I personally would not feel comfortable watching at least 2 of the episodes with my father. There's the massive sex scene, and I'm saying massive. It's, a lot of people are like, oh, it's not that bad, but to children and to share with family members, it is a lot. It is rated R. And I think that it really taints the Star Trek franchise. Because for me, Star Trek is so deeply rooted into my family and the way I was brought up. And so to have a Star Trek that's so dark and sexual is honestly, I was really sad. And when I heard Captain Tilly use the F-bomb, honestly, just a little piece of my heart broke, because I was so team Tilly. And when that happened, I had a lot of emotion inside me that was just like, this isn't right. This isn't Star Trek. No, it's so very muddied now. And again, it's a great sci-fi show. It's in no means bad. It's just not the Star Trek. It's not my Star Trek. It's not the Star Trek that I have such respect and love for in my heart. It's just another sci-fi show.
Well, I want you to expand on something that you were just saying, though, as we kind of passed over that. You were talking about how you work for a long time with adults with special needs.
Yes.
And you would use Star Trek as a learning tool. And I really want to focus on that, because I'm so curious as to what that was like, what the experience was like, what you were using within the shows, and what that led you to with them. Because I think that's a part of this key element, part of your reaction to new Star Trek, how you can't use that the same way you did the other shows.
Okay. So yeah, I actually started a thing called Comic Club at My Possibilities, where I taught for a while, and we would meet every Friday morning for about an hour and a half, about an hour. And we would use different sci-fi franchises to do lessons. And some of the lessons I used from Star Trek were, let me think, that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So we talked about that with a lot of the rules, and why we have rules, why rules are important. And I could just kind of go and pull up clips from Star Trek that kind of outlined little pieces of that. When we would do outings with our club as well. So we did Comic Cons, and we used to go to a comic shop down the street that was gracious enough. I talked them into opening it out 2 hours early on Fridays just so my class could come. It was great. And we brought donuts and stuff, but we did the, boldly go where no one has gone before. And we talked about how exploration and even vacations and self-exploration and, filling your days with adventure and laughter and love and exploration is so important, and why humans do these things, and why it's important for humans to do these things, and what all of these things can do to benefit them. And so I had each one of them kind of write or draw, if they weren't capable of writing, pictures of places they would boldly go. So that was a whole deal, and it was a homework assignment that I took home or they had them take home and bring back. And then we talked about expressing your emotions in a healthy way, and we used Spock a lot. And we had I had a big poster of Spock, and now it's in my living room. It's this gorgeous picture of Spock, and it's a silhouette. It's an actual photograph of Leonard Nimoy, and it has a trickle tear that's just ever so slightly caught, and it's just the most beautiful poster in my house. I think it's from 19. I don't remember, but anyways, so
it sounds like a 70s thing. I'm certain
it was definitely 70s. It was definitely
okay.
70s. I didn't know what year, but we talked about Vulcan emotion and human emotion, and how it's okay to share emotion, and how that's just a part of us that's deeply embedded into our being. And we tried to do a class. This was hilarious. We tried to do a class without any emotion. So, and then we talked about robots and stuff like that. So they were having a great time pretending not to have emotion and pretending to be robotic or Vulcan. And it was really fun. And I think one of my favorites was the the most powerful thing in the universe is friendship. And so I wanted them to watch little clips of, I use TOS for this, but like Jim and Spock and having, their and Bones and just like the little one-offs that they would say. And I would, talk to them about, why are your friends important? Would you save your friend if this alien was attacking them? And, so it was really fun. Oh, one last one. So I had a student, Tito, and he's actually writing his own comic right now, and he's getting notarized, and I'm just so proud of him. But he has a really hard time speaking when he gets nervous. So he kind of like shuts down. And I got him to, when I was there, I had Fox 4 interview him for one of the events that we had going on. And I told him, don't get, when you start to get nervous, think of Captain Kirk. He has long pauses and he has to think before he speaks. And so, I told him that it's okay to have these long pauses, but not too long. You want to make sure that they're, but it's okay to stop and breathe and then finish. And I talked about how, how Kirk was so influential, and how, the way, his way of speaking is, nationally known, and it's wonderful, and people absolutely love it. And I told him that if you could just break your pauses down like that, you'd be good. So I think he got a really big kick out of that. And we practiced talking like Jim for a little while before his Fox 4 interview. And he did really good. He did really, really good for the interview. So
you taught somebody to speak like William Shatner for public speaking. That's the mind boggles. Yeah. I
the mind melts. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well done. Well done.
It helped him. It worked.
Yeah.
I want to remind people again, 646-558-8656 is the phone number to call, 646-558-8656, or you can click on the Zoom meeting, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone. I want to follow up on the question I asked you a few minutes ago, and I'm not looking for anybody to bash anything that is being produced today. I'm curious, though, about your dad and switching away from Discovery, and you as well. What are your thoughts on the Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto? Like, what about what's going on in the movies right now?
So I am going to be really honest with you. I haven't seen the last film.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm a bad fan.
You're not.
I didn't like the one before.
Okay. Here's the thing, though. I'm so excited for you, though, because there's this really good Star Trek movie out there that you haven't seen, and that's kind of. I mean, I wish I had that. I mean, and I'm not. Whatever. Honestly, I think you'd be pleased with that one. And if you want to fast forward to the motorcycle bit, I understand that too. Because that bothered a lot of people. So it's weird that we're talking about your dad so much, but I mean, it's interesting because you still have an active sort of relationship with him with Star Trek. I mean, there's so many people that we talked to. Like we had a guest on, I guess a couple of months ago now, who said it was always the thing that his older brother watched, but they don't have that active relationship today as far as, we're watching Star Trek or things, and you guys still are. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm curious, like where you all are also obviously of different generations. What's his feeling on the stuff that's happening in the movies? Does he do the sort of, it's not Star Trek thing, or does he give it all a chance and decide as he goes?
I have not watched any of the new movies with my dad. I think I go to the movie theater with my dad like once a year. We have such a beautiful home theater. I don't know why go. I mean, he doesn't seem to be particularly interested in any of the newer films. We have all the stuff 70s and 80s, good to go. We've got, I've got all the movie posters. I think almost all of them in my living room. My house is just total Star Trek, Star Wars. It's like big battle throughout the entire house. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I would love to watch the new films with him and rewatch some of the other ones. But yeah.
Skip the middle one if you want to. It's fine. But seriously.
What was the title of that one? Maybe that's the one I saw and I was like, eh.
Into Darkness. Into Darkness was the one
Into
before.
Darkness. So that one just like, I don't know. It was a good sci-fi.
Oh, I know.
It just like, it wasn't my Star Trek. So.
Oh, I know.
Definitely.
And in fact, Krystle, I'm just going to say, give it about 9.5 years before you watch Beyond, and then you can come be a guest on Mission Log. We will have rolled around to that movie by then, because we only have the rest of DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise to go, and then we get to start over with the JJ movies, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's what I hear. I'm not sure. Hey, we got a little bit of business that we need to do here. But yeah, give us a call. I lost the phone number. 646-558-8656. That's right. 646-558-8656. You give me the first number, John. If you just give me the first number, the rest of it just rolls out.
Yeah, good. 6.
Or you can click the 465588656. Yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah.
We got a couple of things we want to hit. I want to talk about. There was the mention of Discovery a moment ago. There is sort of new Discovery coming in like a couple of weeks, kind of, that we're going to tackle on this show. So we want to talk about how we're doing that. But of course, the first thing we want to do is spend some of your money for you.
How nice, how kind of you, Ken, to do that and to prompt me to remind people about our shop. You can find it at missionlogpodcast.com. You go there on your web browser and you look up in the upper right-hand corner, and there's a list of things you can do there. Sure, you could go to the archive, you could look at shows, but you could also click shop, and that will take you over conveniently enough to our shop. And over there, you will find all the designs that Carl Huber has been making for us, as well as some classic designs. Ken, tell them what they can find there.
Well, they can find the isolinear John and Ken. That is the two of us on a chip. On two separate chips. We're not that close. Carbon Chauvinism is there. Silicon Supporters have their own shirt there that they could buy as well. Your favorite lieutenant and mine, Lieutenant J, is well represented there. Seriously, we need those numbers to be bigger next year at STLV. It was great to have the small army that we had. It needs to be a bit bigger, I think, next year. Bonk Bonk on the Head since 1966. Nova Squadron is represented. The Ditalics Mining Corporation. Yes, you can have your very own Ditalics Mining Corporation shirt. Then we have some of our classic designs as well. Ethos, Pathos, and Logos. You can be as cool as Kirk. And you can take a look at somebody's robot guts.
So all those designs at missionlogpodcast.com, you can get them on shirts, you can get them on mugs, you can get them on stickers and notebooks. Oh, wait a minute. Carlos in the chat says, but are there wall coverings? Carlos, I'm here to help you out. You can get those designs on tapestries as well. Tons of stuff to check out. Make your own truly unique Trek-ish gear. Get yours today at missionlogpodcast.com.
Krystle Starr is our guest this evening. We'll be getting back to Krystle in just a moment. There was this other thing, though, that we forgot to do a bit earlier. I think I was supposed to say it between one thing and another thing, and I forgot. Short treks apparently are a thing, and they are a thing that are coming, that is coming. They are a thing that is coming to a TV near you, provided you're subscribed to CBS All Access. What are we looking at here, John?
All right. So we've got 4 short episodes coming up, and they're going to start on Thursday, October 4th, and they're going to run the first Thursday of every month. Well, except for it looks like Calypso, which comes out on Thursday, November 8th. So that basically within the first week of each month, October, November, December, and January, to get us prepped for the next round of Star Trek Discovery. So just kind of give you an idea, like the first episode is going to focus on Tilly. It'll be a Tilly-centric story called Runaway. Second episode is called Calypso. That's the one that is, let's see. Actually, I don't have the details for that one in front of me. But we have a Saru-centric episode. That's the one coming in December. And then we've got the return of Harry Mudd in The Escape Artist on January 3rd.
One of the things that's been really interesting to me about the new round of Star Trek, have you heard how involved Michael is? I always pronounce his name wrong. Chabon?
No.
Chabon. He's turning up as a writer on these things. I want to say the second one, the one that we don't have the name for, he actually wrote that one. And he is also, according to the picture that Patrick Stewart posted the other day, he's apparently in the room on whatever the Jean-Luc Picard thing is. If you don't know who Michael Chabon is, he wrote, I want to say it was The Wonder Boys, with the novel that movie was based on. Well, he wrote the novel, and of course the novel the movie was based on. One of my favorite novels that I've read in well, I was going to say in recent years, but it's been about 10 years now, I guess, was The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. It actually went on to win the Pulitzer, and it deals with a bunch of like really interesting, really neat nerd stuff, like the 1939 New York World's Fair, like the birth of the comics industry. These guys, Cavalier and Clay, are sort of, I mean, they're nothing like Siegel and Schuster, and yet they certainly share things with Siegel and Schuster. Siegel and Schuster, of course, the guys who created Superman.
Right.
Anyway, I won't go into that novel, but the point is, he is a Pulitzer Prize winning author writing Star Trek.
That's not bad.
How does that happen?
Hey, I'll tell you. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, what I was going to say was, how does that happen? And then what kind of Star Trek do you end up with as a result? So, I mean, if I weren't already somewhat excited about the fact that there's new Trek, he is just an amazing author. And to then say, okay, so now put us 10 years before TOS. Okay, that'll be interesting.
Well, and here's another interesting bit. The last episode, the Harry Mudd episode, is written by Mike McMahon. He is the guy who wrote the TNG Season 8 Twitter handle that then got compiled into a book, his sort of fantasy comedy version of TNG Season 8. He also happens to be, there you go, Warped.
It's called Warped, yes. I can't see my camera right now, or I can't see the screen right now, but yes, that's on the big shelf of Trek back here, so interesting.
He is also a writer-producer on Rick and Morty, and I'm a big fan of Rick and Morty, so I fully expect him to bring some level of craziness, some level of unpredictability, but intelligence, because Rick and Morty is crazy, but it is a very intelligent show.
Now, the other thing to let you know, obviously, with these short treks coming out, we're going to be talking about them here. Now, they're only 15 minutes long, I think, because they are short treks. Yes. So you're not talking about like a full episode necessarily, although I guess if it's a particularly meaty episode, we might be. But whatever the first Tuesday after October 4th is, we'll be talking about that first episode. Whatever the first Tuesday after November 8th is, we'll be talking about that. Whatever the first Tuesday after December 6th is, we'll be talking about that episode. And I believe you begin to see a pattern. There was only one more. I could have just gone ahead and said it, but you know.
Yeah. By the way, Earl says, what kind of Trek did we wind up with when we had authors like Ted Sturgeon and Harlan Ellison writing scripts? Well, so there you go. When you had sci-fi writers like that writing on Star Trek, then, maybe that's some indication.
It's an interesting idea. Yeah. What I don't know is, I don't know if Chabon, and I know I'm pronouncing his name wrong. I don't know if he's written science fiction. He's definitely expressed a love of science fiction. He's definitely expressed a love of that kind of geekery and nerdery in his writing. I'm fascinated by the fact that he was in the room on the Picard show, that he's in the room on the Picard show now. I mean, I'm back and forth on how I feel about Jean-Luc Picard coming back. I mean, I'm excited about it no matter what, but how's it going to be? How's it going to go? I would read whatever he wrote. And then if he's saying, well, okay, tell you what, I'm going to write Star Trek. Okay, well, I guess I'll watch whatever you write then. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about that stuff coming up. So get ready to start talking about Discovery again, because that's happening a lot sooner than a lot of us thought.
Yeah. Hey, let's get back to our guest. She's patiently standing by. Say hello again to Krystle Starr. Thank you again for joining us tonight, Krystle. I want to talk about the convention experience a bit, because this is something that we haven't really gotten into yet. You go from a point of being a fan who's raised watching Star Trek, and then you kind of put that fandom into the real world, because then you start going to conventions. What was your first Trek convention? I know your first STLV was like 3 years ago, but you went to a Star Trek convention well before that.
Oh, yes. I've been going to Trek conventions for a while. My first one, I honestly didn't even know that conventions really. I knew that the Star Trek Las Vegas existed a while before in fact, in junior high, I wrote a paper on where you would like to spend your family vacation. And I was like, Star Trek Las Vegas with my dad. And then my first one, I guess, was in, in high school. I was writing for the school paper, and I heard that William Shatner was going to be at some convention in my hometown, and I was like, oh my god, I have to get my dad to meet Shatner. And I did, and because I was working for the paper, we got to go in like a private room and got to like do a Q&A with him, like 2-on-1. I got to bring my dad with me, and I was just like like I was freaking out, and because Shatner was like my dad's idol. Like Shatner was like, my dad loved Shatner so much. And yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And we got to ask him questions in the Q&A panel room with before we did the interview. And it was just, I think I asked him like how many women he kissed in the show, because my dad loved the fact that he was a ladies' man. And it was so magical meeting him at the convention and having my dad meet him. And then from that point, I was like, okay, goal. I'm going to meet the entire living cast of TOS. And we did. And Chekhov was my last one. So we got to his autograph's just right there. But yeah, and I like cried ridiculous, like happy tears when I met him, and he was just so sweet. So
hey, very quickly. Well, we do have a caller, but before we get to Earl, really quickly, I just want to mention that we have somebody who's watching live right now who is a friend of the three of us, and that would be Scott Palm. He was very excited that you were coming on the show, Krystle, because he said that you helped him at STLV to become a Vulcan.
Yeah, his first cosplay.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us just really quickly before we go to Earl about that. I'm curious.
Okay. So Scott came up and he really wanted to get on the bridge. And I thought that I could do that for him because I thought that I had enough clout to make that happen. And I probably could have if I had just met the right person sooner. But my goal was to help Scott out. And then I was talking to Scott. I was like, Scott, I'm not sure if I can do that. And he was like, that's okay, but I would love to cosplay. And I was like, why don't you become a Vulcan today? And he was like, how? I can't. And I was like, what? They're selling Vulcan ears. Let's get you a pair. And so Scott, we went over there, and Scott is, he needed assistance putting the ears on. So we busted the ears out, and I got Scott hooked up with some pretty awesome Vulcan ears on both sides. And I told him they were going to be painful for the first time you're wearing them. And I think he got to wear them for a few hours before he had enough. But I've got a video of Scott and I with his first cosplay, and it was pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. And I think that he thoroughly enjoyed being a Vulcan for the day. Nice. So thank you, Scott, for helping me help you.
Very good. Let's jump over to Earl, who is patiently standing by. Earl, I see what you're holding in your hands, and I think you're doing that just to make me green with envy.
Really?
Sure. Wait. From my angle, it looked like you were holding a model of Vincent, but now I see Vincent is
no. Yeah. He's on there. Okay. My robot guts.
Yeah. Well, an excellent choice in shirt.
Kind of jumping back to the question of Michael Chabon, I remembered something from, I think it was Judith and Garfield Stevens' Star Trek Phase 2 book, that at one point I had to Wikipedia this real quick so I could look up the author. At one point, they had the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull attached to one of the pre-motion picture scripting attempts to do a Star Trek movie as Richard Bach.
That is not surprising at all, because Star Trek the motion picture was so weird. And remember, one of the biggest moments in Star Trek the motion picture is Spock holding Kirk's hand, right?
Yes.
That's a big moment. And that's so when you say Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I'm like, yeah, I could completely see that.
So this simple feeling is beyond V'ger's comprehension. And scene.
Yeah. So there's kind of a history there. And, there were numerous authors, I think, that were attached, or not really attached is not the word. They were hoping they would write scripts during TOS that never got around to it. But the fact that you got people like Norman Spinrad and Ted Sturgeon in there, that's not a bad batting average. And we've had great science fiction turned out by people like Peter Allen Fields, who came to us from detective shows. So I'm eager to see.
Gene Roddenberry came to us from what? Came from cop shows and Western.
Have Gone and Lieutenant. Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone, I think I may be the only person in the room who's actually gone through and watched every episode of The Lieutenant. It's actually a good show that you can see where it leads directly to what Gene was doing in TOS, because he had to move the venue into outer space so he wouldn't have the network drop kick an episode because he was daring to talk about racism, because there was an episode of The Lieutenant that never made it to air that would have been Nichelle Nichols' first screen credit.
Yeah.
But kind of veering back somewhat toward the main topic, the cosplay thing is not for me. I have a body type that maybe I could do TOS Harry Mudd, but I just don't want to be TOS Harry Mudd. Or I could be a Tellarite. But I admire the people who...
You can literally be anything you want to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, Krystle, you got to jump in on this, because I have seen all people of all types do all costumes.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of the beauty of it.
If you wanted to do the mirror universe of Uhura, you totally could. Like, you could literally do whatever you wanted to do.
Dude, a professional just told
pictures.
You that.
I would love that. I would love that.
Mm-hmm.
Challenge accepted. Well, maybe.
Yeah. Earl, me and you next year, scants. All right. I'm bringing the scant back.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Krystle.
I've seen some very interesting body types do Slave Leia, and those are always my absolute favorites.
Chris Gore does Slave Leia, and you can Google that if you. Yeah. I'm sorry, I just brought it to a halt right there.
And you won't be alone, Earl. I think that people will flock to you and be so happy that you're empowering them to do their next cosplay as well. So I think that you'd be pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Someday I may actually work up the nerve.
If you need any help, you can totally reach out to me and I'll help you.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Hey, actually, Adam in the chat says for Krystle, what is your dream Star Trek cosplays? And when you've done that you will do. But,
I'm working on it right now, actually.
Are you?
So I'm like, actually, I have a little thing on my desk. I was giving these out at Star Trek Vegas, and it is myself in a TOS swimsuit thing. So yeah, basically just sexifying it even further. And it's actually what I will be taking to New York Comic-Con next week or the week after. So we're working on that one right now.
Excellent. Very cool.
Yeah.
Earl, thanks so much, man. As always, a pleasure to have you on, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Thank you very much
for having
me.
I like your toy collection, the Star Wars and Star Trek.
Hey, we got the lightning round coming up in just a moment. I'm sure John told Krystle all about the lightning round because that is one of the things that John does best. But
see, in all that time that we talked, there are other things to talk about. So
that's too bad. One day, though, one day somebody's going to know that the lightning round is coming up. But as our viewers do. Before we get to that, though, I want to remind you really quickly: when we are done here, I want you to stay right here because Priority One, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, is going to be starting just a few minutes after this show ends. Every week, Elijah, Kana, and Anthony get together to talk about all kinds of Star Trek stuff. Do I think they're going to be talking about the short treks? Oh, yes. I think they'll be talking about that. What else are they going to be talking about, though? Who knows? It is the news from the Star Trek universe, or multiverse, as they say, put on live every Tuesday night. And if you want to see how much mastery there is to the editing of that show, you should also download the show on Friday, because the show on Tuesday is sort of like a freewheeling, everybody have fun tonight. Dare I say everybody Wang Chung tonight? I don't know.
Say it.
But it's like a freewheeling kind of thing. And then Friday, what you get is this really really well crafted audio show. So I say do both. But if you can't join them live tonight, do be sure to go to podcast.roddenberry.com and click through and start downloading that show, because we might talk about Star Trek news. No. They talk about Star Trek news every week. But coming up just a few minutes after this show, facebook.com/PriorityOnePodcast. Facebook.com/PriorityOnePodcast, and tell them John sent you. And you can tell them I sent you too if you want, but tell them John sent you, and all caps on John. John sent.
So that's how it is, huh? Okay.
There's no reason. It's just something I was thinking about. So Krystle, apparently John did not mention to you that there's going to be a lightning round. But as I say to people who John forgets to tell, you grew up in the Western Hemisphere, it sounds like. So I'm assuming you have the idea of a lightning round. We throw a question at you. You fire back an answer as fast as you can, like lightning, one might say.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I was going to say, John, why don't you kick us off?
All right, I'll kick us off. Here we go, Krystle. Favorite starship?
Constitution.
Okay. All right. Favorite episode?
Oh, God.
Could be any series, any Star Trek series, presumably, but favorite episode.
Oh God, there's so many. I hate this.
It's seeming less like lightning.
I know I don't have a lightning. So is it TOS? Favorite TOS?
Sure. Pick a TOS. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
It's okay because
I love short leave.
Short leave. Far out. Nice okay. Borg Queen, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Favorite tech from Star Trek?
Geordi, is he a tech? Does he count as a tech?
Wow, that's really interesting. So you mean a techie guy? No, I mean, we were thinking in terms of most people say replicator or most people say transporter, but I love.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
like a technician. I love that.
Well, I do love the ability. I love the episode where he's what's the episode Next Gen when he's talking about the race that kills off all the imperfect people, and without them he wouldn't have been able to make his visor. What is that episode?
Yeah, I'll get back to you in a week on that. What's your favorite warp speed? There are no wrong answers.
Yeah, I don't know. 7 is 7 a warp speed?
Seven is a fine warp speed. That is a fine warp speed. All right. Engineering, science, or ops?
Science.
Right on.
Who's your favorite Star Trek antagonist?
Depends on the episode. Does Worf count as one depending on the episode? Depending on the episode.
Sure.
He's
if you want
surly. He's a bit surly, and many of them. Yeah. I like that.
Date night, Arboretum or Ton Ford?
Ooh. Probably Ton Ford to get people watch.
All right. And and the last question, as is always the case, have you ever been to Vulcan, Alberta, Canada?
I don't think I know what that means.
Okay, well, it's a place, and so I'm guessing the answer is no.
Oh, have I been there?
Have you been? Yeah, Vulcan,
no.
Alberta. They have a big thing in the middle of the city, and apparently the town council dresses up like people from Star Trek. No lie. I know, right?
I'm writing it down. Yeah. What's it called?
Yeah.
It's Vulcan is the name of the city, and it's in the province of Alberta, and it's in the country of Canada, which you'll find conveniently located upstairs from the U.S.
Right. No, I didn't even know. I never heard that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Glad I came on. Thanks for inviting me. That's what I learned from this show.
That's what we try to do. We try to, and it's only taken us 54 minutes, 55. We try to find one thing that we can inform our guest about.
Brandon, I was just informed. Brandon says that Canada is America's hat.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that before. I don't think Canada is really fond of that, but whatever. We only have at least one Canadian I know and love watching the show right now. But whatever, let's make fun of her. Why not? Hey, we have seriously about 3 minutes left, and I have a question because while we have focused on Star Trek because this is a Star Trek podcast, I know a lot of your cosplay, a lot of your geekery, a lot of the other stuff that you do. I mean, you're not just there are a number of us who are just Star Trek geeks. You are, you're heavy into geekery across the board. I'm curious, the same kinds of things that you look for in Star Trek, is that what drives you into other properties, characters, franchises?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I think that's why I've really taken a big step back from, I took a big step back from DC about 5 years ago. They were just too dark for me to teach my classes. And it just wasn't aligning with my beliefs of heroism. And I think that, I love the Marvel books. But as far as the movies go, they're just kind of too action packed and they don't really get down to what being a hero is. And I think with Star Trek, you have, Jean-Luc is one of my, he's my favorite captain because of just this. He really is the hero in most of the episodes, and he has such a great outlook on life and how to treat humanity. So yeah, I really do try to find that in a lot of my other fandoms.
That's interesting because Superman, you sort of think Superman is always Superman, but you're right. You get to things like Man of Steel or something. it does become incredibly dark. Kind of like Star Trek. Discovery got a bit dark, but you're still a fan of Kirk. You're still a fan of Picard. Is it tougher to sort of reach back on some of them because things get so dark? Or, you're just sort of at least we always have the golden age, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, we will always have the golden age. And I think that's what makes Star Trek, to be quite honest. And yeah, I really hope the new stuff with Patrick Stewart is more family friendly. I really hope that they don't continue this dark dive into non-family friendly territory. I would love to be able to have children and watch Star Trek always. I would love to always have that to fall back on. And I think it would be a huge tragedy and a giant mistake for the franchise to continue down this dark hole.
I know we're just coming right up close to the end. Can we go ahead and ask Krystle, though, and maybe we can put Krystle's contact information up. I want to make sure that we actually say it because so often we put it up on the screen and we forget to let people know that, hey, there are words on the screen. But if we don't have that, Krystle, if people wanted to find you online, if people want to sort of follow you, what are the best ways to do that?
So I live on Instagram. So you can find me at Starfleet Academy with 2 R's. My name is Krystle Starr, and Starr is spelled with 2 R's. If you want to get a hold of me, I think that's probably the best way to do it. I don't really check Facebook that often, and I never log on Twitter. So I think Instagram is your best bet. So either, Star Trek or Starfleet Academy or Krystle Star Wars. Don't hate me. But yeah, I have I have 5 Instagram accounts, but those are the ones I check pretty frequently.
Great. And you mentioned New York Comic Con, and
Yes.
you have more conventions coming up after that. You said you hit a lot in a year.
Yes. So this year I'm actually trying to do more vacays to LA or to wherever. Colorado and California are really where I'd like to spend most of my time this year. But yeah, I think New York Comic-Con, and then I've got Dallas Comic-Con the week right after that. I may or may not hit back to LA Comic-Con like the end of October. That's just a lot of traveling, and I love my dog, so that's kind of hard. And then November and December are my no conventions. Those are like my time to recharge as a human being. So, but yes, I do typically go to quite a few conventions a year.
Coincidentally, Ken recharges as a robot. So yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for coming on, Krystle. Really appreciate it. Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer, Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live is by Infinity Networks. Producer, Brandon Bradley. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network, including not just Mission Log, but also Women at Warp, Priority One, and the Trek Files. Thank you to everyone who joined us live or later, and we will talk to you next week.